One of my favorite things in the entire world is when a company comes along and takes an established product or an established concept design for a product and they say, yeah, that's cool, everyone's doing it that way, but what if we did it in a completely different way? What if we shifted the paradigm just to see what would happen, right? Like, those often are some of my favorite devices. Given many of you probably came to know my channel through my videos covering Surface Duo, that probably does not come as a great surprise to you. But guys, we have devices that are, seemingly novel, that are already at that point where I think that they need to be questioned and they need to be experimented with once again. We've got these folding OLED flip phones. They're like flip phones of the past years gone by, but they have a folding screen. And all of these flip phones look pretty much the same broad strokes. You have a large slab style phone with a very similar aspect ratio to a normal phone that simply folds over halfway. But now, courtesy of Huawei, we have a brand new idea for one of these devices. This is the Huawei Pura X, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of Surface Duo in a weird way because of the aspect ratio. We just have to take a look at their little trailer and see what we think. All right, so here is the trailer, and it starts off showing a fairly normal looking phone. This could easily be something like a Z Flip, but then what happens is it expands out. Now, that's not actually what this phone does. It doesn't like magically grow. They're just showing normal phone, and then, hey, that's what this new phone, the Pura X, is going to be like. And they do the same thing here, expanding it out, showing that this is a wider device. This is a 6.3-inch diagonal, 16 by 10 aspect ratio. This is an aspect ratio which is much more similar to what tablets use instead of what phones use, right? So something like the Z Flip is, if I'm not mistaken, like 22 by 9. This is 16 by 10. So take a 16 by 9 monitor, which your computer probably uses, and then make it a little bit taller, and you have this device's aspect ratio. Once again, sort of showing the differences here. That is a normal phone, and then shaking it, and now you see what the Pura X is going to look like. This is basically a little bitty 6.3-inch tablet because of that aspect ratio. And you can see here how split screening apps would actually be very different on this device. Granted, it's going to be smaller than a normal tablet, but if we look at my article here on ShaneCraig.tech where I go over this, I pulled out my old Galaxy Tab S7 and I split screened two apps. This is also a 16 by 10 display. It's a lot bigger, but that's the shape that these applications would be if you split screened them. But of course, this is a folding phone, okay? This is like a Z Flip or something like that. It just happens to have a completely different aspect ratio. You can see here, I think these are like some special editions which have some different colors and so forth, but it looks pretty thin. I don't think it's quite like, world's thinnest foldable thin, but it does definitely look pretty thin. You can see here that cover display, which is 3.5 inches, and it is a square. And from the looks of this, you'll see this a bit later on in this video, you can do quite a bit on that cover display. You also do have a quad camera setup. It's kind of quad camera, so you have, if I'm not mistaken, a 50 megapixel primary. We'll just go back to my article here to be sure about this. A 40 megapixel ultra wide, 8 megapixel 3.5x telephoto, and then there is a very low resolution color sensor on there as well, all right above that cover display. And you get a good look here about how small this thing actually is resting on someone's hand. That really is, similar size to something like the Z Flip. It's just that rather than folding this way, you're folding the other direction. It's not exactly that because the shape is not exactly the same, but you kind of get the general idea that way. From a lot of the imagery here, this device is actually meant to be held and used in this landscape posture. You can see here watching video content. And look, if this is a 16 by 9 video and you pinched to zoom it in, you're not going to lose a whole lot of content off of your sides. Or you could just have a little bit of letterbox and you would have just a very, very thin black bar at the top and bottom. Compared to something that's 22 by 9, video content is going to look a lot better on this size aspect ratio device. They also do show gaming on this device, which I actually think would be a really solid use for this. If you've ever tried gaming on something like this, that's very, very narrow, it's just not a great experience, right? But this gives you much more screen real estate on that height department when you're in landscape orientation. Here you can get a look at that cover display being used, and I'm not exactly sure if you can just do anything you want to do on that cover display or not. but it does seem to show quite a bit of things, right? So you've got a call taking place, you've got maybe like a video and like a timer or something. Maybe that's like a workout app. You have music playing there, you have navigation going on there. So again, it's unclear if you can do everything on this. Maybe it says it in this video and I just haven't translated it, but you can definitely do quite a lot on that cover display. You're actually playing a game there, so maybe that game is made specifically for the cover display, or maybe you can just do everything. So a couple of odds and ends here. It does have a 4700 milliamp hour battery, 60 watt wired charging, and 40 watt wireless charging. That is pretty darn solid. IPX8 water resistance. Fingerprint scanner is in that power button. We've talked about those cameras already. 12 gigabytes of RAM, and then this thing is starting for around the equivalent of about $1,000 US, which is really not bad at all. I would love to see an OEM besides Huawei make a device very, very similar to this. Because, one thing, it's unclear, given that this is a Huawei device, if it will ever actually be leaving China. So it might be very difficult for us, in other regions to get our hands on it. And then also it's running Harmony OS. So that makes it a lot more difficult to run your standard Android apps, your Google Play Store, Google Play services, things like that. You do have a lot of apps that Huawei has now gotten together for Harmony OS, but it's just, look, I would rather just have normal Android on something like this. But looking at that aspect ratio, it really does remind me of using Surface Duo in phone mode, where it's, just a little bit wider than a normal phone is. And it's something that some people really, really liked and some people really thought was uncomfortable and weird. I was definitely of the group of people that thought that this was really cool, really enjoyed having that extra space. So imagine that, but just a little bit bigger, right? So this is a 5.8 inch screen diagonal. This is a 6.3 inch screen diagonal. So a little bit bigger than what we had there in phone mode on Surface Duo. Guys, I would love to know what you think about this very, very interesting device in those comments down below. If another company made something like this that would be, like I said, easier to obtain, around $1,000, running Android, would you be interested in something like this? Personally, I think I would be, but let me know what you think in those comments. Subscribe for more content just like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.